Welcome to The Dead Life. Here's world-renowned medium, Allison DuBois.
Today is part 2 of my interview with Carolyn Ullrich. She practices spirituality in many forms. She'll talk more today about her story, how she first knew she had abilities, how her family felt about her abilities, and the millennial generation perspective of her craft. Maybe we should send you to the Renaissance Festival consistently for the entire time that it's in town, and you could be around those people, which is there's a similar vibe to it. It's not exactly the same, but that might make it so you're like, screw it, I want a turkey leg. You just start having a good time because you just realize that you can do this. You just have to acclimate to the energy. And when we stay away from people for extended periods of time, we're no longer acclimated to that kind of energy. And then we go out there and it overwhelms us. So totally relate to that. Tell us about your spiritual fairs, though. That was my next question. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I started them in the Midwest. So I'm based out of Kansas City, Missouri for usually like 8 months out of the year. And then for the last 4 years, I've spent the other 4 months in Scottsdale. So I started them on the Missouri side of Kansas City, and then I moved them to St. Louis. And then we have a couple in Kansas. We were up in Nebraska, but I've dropped those. So we just kind of bounce around. But I started them basically because I wanted a space of inclusion for people. And I was like, I do this. And I started to get more and more friends that were in the field. And I loved just going to festivals and fairs. And we didn't really have any. We had one. And I just met people working a fair and said, I want to do this. And it started as a one-day event. And now it's expanded. And you'll walk in and, we have anywhere from 25 different kinds of readers, different kinds of energy workers, healers, all different kind of metaphysical, spiritual vendors. We do workshops that are included with a ticket. That's where I don't read at them, but I do galleries, which is just really fun. A lot of people in the community forget that I even do readings because they just see me as this huge, because it's one of the biggest fairs out there. So they just see me as that person. They're like, oh, you do readings too? And I'm like, yeah, that's actually like my main gig. But it's very much needed in the Midwest because we don't have a lot of, we don't have a lot of resources just for like grounding or like holistic wellness. Like here, you can just go to a mountain or if you live on the ocean. So
we're known for it here.
Need for it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You'll find the energetic differences between even Kansas City and 4 hours across the state and St. Louis are very different. And a lot of people that come to our events, they have no experience with anything spiritual. But what it comes down to is every person that's coming in there is needing some form of healing or seeking some sort of answer. And it's really important to me to have a lot of diversity among the age and the gender and the race and just like all the different things. I have people that are Christians that do work. I have Wiccans, I have pagans. And the whole idea is like, whoever you are, you can walk in and find somebody or something that you need to align to. A lot of people just hang out the whole day and they go to the workshops for free the whole time. Mm-hmm. They just talk to people. I love to go to other people's fairs. I like to be around it, and it's nice. It makes you feel normal, right. Like it makes you feel normal when you're like, oh, I just saw an elf, and your buddy's like, oh yeah, there's a dragon, and nobody questions that you're like saying all this weird stuff.
I found with people that haven't been read before, it does help since you're doing a festival anyway, if you had like a tent or an area where they could do chakra clearings and alignments when they're able to do breathing exercises and sort of visualization techniques, it tends to open up something in them that flows better, like their energy flows better, and they're able to receive messages more easily and engage as being a part of it. I don't know if you have an area that does this, but I was in Lilydale years ago. Have you been to Lilydale?
Is that up in New York?
Yeah, outside of Buffalo, New York. Okay. It's an entire town of mediums. Their homes look like pink gingerbread houses. They're all these bright color homes. There's a lake and canoes, and it's actually really fun, and they open up to the public in the summer, but you have to be a medium to actually live there. And they've got 150-year-old, at least, pet cemetery, and they have a school for the children that grow up there. And I got to teach some of those kids. it'd be kind of cool if at your fair you had like an area for the children to sit in a circle with their pad of paper and pencil and write them impressions they get connected to one another and practice pulling impressions. Because I found that children, once they know what to do with the energy, put it in on paper, write it down, and they learn how to automatic write, it really helps them to put that anxiety somewhere. It's kind of akin to journaling, but it's in action. It's reading people and learning how to do that. But it was just cool. That's all.
You're making me think about when people leave to the event that I should have like somebody that literally just like clears them and grounds them before they walk out. It's also really neat. We get a lot of parents that bring in their kids and they're basically like, my kid's special, help me. And it's so neat that they're like open and like willing to do that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like it skipped that back like a generation again where they're doing that. And some of these little kids, man, their auras are so big, people aren't even getting close to them. I had a little kid once. It was so funny. My business card has my face on it. And one of my friends had a table selling crystals. And she said she watched this little boy pick up my business card off the ground, set it on the table, look through this basket of crystals, pick a specific crystal and set it on my card and walk away. And of course, it was a carnelian, which was what I was wearing that day. Very like this little kid was like, and I'm like, of course I couldn't find him. I'm like, where is this little child? I need him to come fix me.
Where's the chosen one? I need to speak with the chosen one. Those kids all need black obsidian necklaces or something to get them through their childhood and ground their energy, because
that was the first big crystal I bought, was a massive black obsidian.
They're actually so helpful. And I think it's a smoky quartz that I have. It's a ring my mom gave me. She was a little over the top, so it's a rather large rock. And I put it on my hand because I was going to the nail salon, which is no fun anymore these days because everybody, no borders and boundaries. They've got their kids and their dogs, and it's just like, whatever. But I wore the ring that day so that I'd be more grounded and it would repel things from my psychic energy space and protect me psychically. And so I wore it. And honestly, it was the best experience I'd had in a salon in years when I was there because of that stone. So for the people that don't believe in it, I'm just going to continue being helped by it while you don't believe in it, because it works.
No, I absolutely agree. I went to a holiday once. And I remember doing this and thinking, why am I doing this? I got out of the shower. I didn't put on any crystals. I didn't put on any of my essential oils. Mm-hmm. And then I went to be around my family knowing that it was not going to be good. And I left with a migraine in an hour. And I was like, why did you do that? Like, you knew better. It was almost like I was testing my own ability to just like boundary myself or something. But after that, it was like, no, if I don't have a crystal on it, I'm really big on essential oils, on that too. Like, I have my own shield and my own protection, but I want the extra help. So I'm going to take it.
It's there for us, and it's part of the earth. All of the ingredients and properties are part of the earth and so naturally part of us. I don't know how it doesn't make sense to some people, but that's a whatever, everybody figures it out in their own time, in their own way. But I want to it's going to be my fourth formula of vodka. I want to make a protection formula that's infused with the ingredients for protection, because a lot of times people are out and they're not comfortable or they don't want to be there. And I thought it would protect their energy so that they can weather the storm of whatever work dinner they're at, or, break up with a boyfriend or whatever it is. So the protection oils are legit. I've used them. They really do help. And that's good advice for young mediums too. I have a lot of my listeners who are like really amazing moms and dads that buy those essential oils, especially the protection oil, for their small children. And so when the children go to bed, they can anoint themselves with it and know that they're protected, and they sleep more easily, especially intuitive children, which I find almost 100% of children are intuitive until we corrupt that beautiful light inside of them with the world. And and they start shutting down from peer pressure or being mocked or not believed, and they just start shutting down. So if you have a child out there and you're listening and they're a sensitive, and they most likely are, the essential oils, the protection oils can be very helpful. GrannyMagic.com has them. Do you also have a store?
I just make them and sell them to like friends and things like
Gotcha.
that. That's not, I used
Okay.
to do that, but not anymore. I
It's
will
a
say
lot
there's
of
a lot
work.
of people that make something called monster spray for
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
And it's those essential oils and they spray it underneath their bed and things like that. Makes it fun for them.
Yeah. No, that's excellent idea for children, because children are the most exposed. They have the fewest boundaries of any of us out there, with the exception of the mentally ill have no borders or boundaries. But children, that's a place where we can actually, the way we raise them can change who they become, and them seeing their gifts as a positive rather than a negative. It's not something that they should have to hide. They just have to find their people out in the world, as I went out and did. And 20 years ago, it was very different than it is now. And I'll tell you, even going to Canada and hanging out with other mediums, because I was on tour in Canada at the time. I toured for 18 years doing live events, and it was a whole thing. And I was hanging out with one of the mediums. They had a barbecue for me. So there was like 200 women there. All of them smoked. I'm like, it's how they grounded themselves with the tobacco. Hilarious. They were all sort of witchy in nature, which I kind of loved. And I just had the best time. You didn't have to ask yourself what they thought of you, where you stood with them. I have found most mediums are very direct people because they know life is short and they don't have time to mince words. And I really appreciate people who are really forthright with how they feel and what their thoughts are, because you don't have to spend all your energy digging to try and know them. They're just like, this is who I am. It's like, great. But it was interesting traveling the world and seeing people in the spiritual realm from different countries and how they had a slightly different tone to them from other countries. And I really did enjoy that. But your festivals, it'd be cool if at some point it becomes 21 and older and you just like open up a bar and let them drink and have a good time and get some more readings. And I found that tends to lower their defenses, and they're just like, this is great. As we found when you were doing readings last weekend, people were drinking the money potion, the love potion, they were intention setting, they were having a good time. And then you were there for any question that maybe they wouldn't have asked before because they were so hesitant of what someone would think of them, or maybe I don't want the answer. And they just did it. And I'm so glad that you were there. It made the event fantastic. And I know you don't often maybe do this, or can people come to you if they want to have you at some of the larger events?
Yeah, I do. I do it a lot of during like the seasonal type events and around like Halloween and things like that. I really do enjoy the group aesthetics.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of hard after like 3 hours. You got to work in breaks. But what I found was really neat at this event was when friends would sit together, it was so much better because I would say something and a friend would gasp.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the sitter didn't have a choice but to admit what I was saying was true. And it was like, it was so fantastic. And they're like, yeah, no, you're right on. Just keep talking. And I'm like, thanks for the confirmation.
It's always better.
Yeah.
It's always better when there's a friend or a sister there, because they totally give away the person that's being read that's got the poker face. And it's like, oh, thank you. Like, this doesn't have to be hard. Let's just. I
actually really enjoy doing, like, I've done a couple of bridal showers and bachelorette parties where it's just 10 women and they go one at a time for readings, but they all sit around and listen to each other. I have a group of girls that they do that once a year, and it's so neat because they all chime in on everybody's reading. It's like their life advice.
Yeah.
So those are really fun parties to do.
I guess.
And I've done those over Zoom too. I
guess the only bad moment that there could be is when their friend says, I told you he was wrong for you. I told you. I'm
like, yeah, I did have a couple reading ones, and I was like, she wouldn't leave for me to do the partner at this Halloween party. And I was like looking at him and he's looking at me. And I was like, we just like connected and I just did not say what I wanted to say because yeah. And then like, he just kept staring at me all night long. And I'm like, no, I'm reading your mind. I'm not going to tell her, sir. But I was on his side. So
it is funny with the guys though. They have more to hide. They're afraid to shake our hands. The ones I always tell Joe and my friends this, when a husband of someone who's introducing me to him is afraid to shake my hand, they're the people who have the most to hide. They always are the people that have the most to hide. It's like, don't worry. I don't actually care what you're doing on the weekend, or if you took your secretary out to dinner, I don't care. It's a misconception with mediums and psychics that they think that we always are digging in their head. It's like most of the time we don't want to know. If we're not working,
try not to.
Right? That's borders and boundaries with ourselves and preserving our energy. I mean, it's exhausting. It takes a lot of energy to read people's energy, especially if you want to dig deep in their head or in their soul. And so we don't do that when we're out socially. We're just socializing.
Well, when people ask that, they're like, did you read me or did you pick up anything off me? I'm like, listen, you first off, you don't really want me to. You know, if I meet men in the dating world and they're like, ask about readings, I'm like, once I know these things about you, I can't unknow them. Once I hear them, I can't unhear them. Do you really want me to have access to your energy and your chakras and like tell you what's going on in your deep, darkest childhood wounds? Like, probably not.
Right. Right. No, it's so true. My friend Rich Barra, he's a morning show host on Kiss FM. He's a funny guy. Years ago, I told him how people are always like, you have advice for me? Like, what are you getting on me? It's like, I'm just trying to eat lunch, but no, I'm not really looking into your energy. He's like, just tell them, Allison, just tell them never turn left and walk away. And I was like, okay. And I've actually said that a couple of times and people get totally freaked out because now they're afraid to ever turn left because they're like, am I going to be in a car accident? Am I going to die? It's like, yeah. So sometimes we have to have fun with our abilities and our profession. Like I've used it to pick slot machines that'll pay off. Why not? My dad loved Vegas. He'd want me to. And I feel like we were given this gift to help other people, but it's inside of us. So let's enjoy it as well. So I'm not someone who won't use it if I need to protect my energy. That's happened. Yeah. So
it's funny. I just won money at the boats a couple weekends ago because I waited. My buddy and was gambling, and I waited until a machine lit up. It took about 30 minutes, and it lit up.
Yep.
Like, wow, I should do that more often.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have a relative that love to gamble. They'll highlight the slot machine for you, like cast a light over it, so you know that one pays off. So they can.
My dad did.
So there you go.
Yeah, so, he took me to the boats on my 16th birthday, or on my 21st birthday. We call them the boats in the Midwest.
Okay,
on water.
Yeah.
So he took me to the casino on my 21st birthday, and I won $1,600. And so, yeah.
So when you won last weekend or recently, that was your dad's way of saying, "I'm taking care of you, baby. See." I blessed you.
Yeah.
Like, because you were there, you feel connected to him and he's saying, I got you. And I love that. I do. So some people say, don't use it for things like that. It's from God. It's like, okay, God let us create casinos and I'm sure God would want us to enjoy ourselves while we're here. And that's the point that the dead always make to me. Stop worrying what everybody else thinks about you. They won't even be at your funeral. Who cares? So that really hit home for me. And I'm just going to live life kind of irreverently and go out with my hair on fire. That's my plan. Not literally on fire, but figuratively.
The people that think spiritual practitioners are supposed to struggle financially. And it's like, they just don't understand abundance. They don't understand the mindset. And my agreement with spirit is as long as you take care of me, I will pass on your message and take care of other people.
Yeah.
You know, I made that deal with them years ago and I still work hard,
honestly,
but it works for me.
It's an exchange of energy. I'm always telling people in the business that are younger, and I'm happy to hear that you have such strong borders and boundaries. It's an exchange of energy. and it's okay. And you have to charge, or people don't value the reading. You can't do them for free, or you're going to get the people who don't value it, and they'll come back to you 19 times and never listen to anything you have to say. But we all do our fair share of an occasional donating a reading for somebody that actually, really, really needed it. And we donate our time, maybe not formally, but we do the reading for someone who needs it. And we know we're there in that time and that place for that reason. And we do it. I've been on tour in Canada, and there was a picture of a missing girl, Tori, that was everywhere. And I looked at my cousin, who was my tour manager, and I said, I'm going to have to go to where she disappeared. I said, I have bronchitis. I have an event tomorrow, but I got to go to where she disappeared. And I did my write-up, and I turned it over to the law enforcement who was sitting on the plane next to me on my flight to Canada. I'm like, oh, okay. So obviously this is a case I'm supposed to work. I mean, her face and name kept coming up before I ever went to Canada. And then when I was sitting next to the guy in charge of the investigation on the flight, I'm just like, okay, I got it. I'll go. And I did it. And I never charged for any readings. I did for murders. Like the murder cases I worked for 20 years, I did pro bono. That was my way of giving back to the universe for the blessings that I've received and for my gift. And that brings balance to my life. So each individual, I think, with abilities has to decide what feels right to them and stick with that and not worry about what other people think we should do with our life. They can worry about their own life. Don't tell me about mine.
That's amazing. I don't know that I would think that most people didn't know that about you, that you did all that work for free.
Yeah. Yeah. I just didn't feel right ever charging for anything like that. It was, and actually I did it at my expense because I'd have to travel to some of these places in order to do it. But I did, and it was the right thing. And it sort of goes back to my childhood when I knew I was going to grow up to put bad guys away. I just wanted to help children. I wanted to help the victims. And that was my way of doing it. And that and the Amber Alert. I initiated the Amber Alert for the state of Arizona in 2001 and served on the task force to design it. Or no, in 2000. That was 2000. So that was me saying to little Allison, you did it. You grew up and you did it. And I think that's a healthy way for people to look at the accomplishments as adults, is to acknowledge the child in you that maybe wasn't heard, so that part of you has this resolute feeling of knowing that she grew up to be exactly who she wanted to be. It's all part of the soul, and it just feels right. So before I let you go, do you have any advice for young mediums who feel like they don't fit in? Because you got a couple generations coming up under you now that don't know what to do when they experience what they experience. Maybe advice for their parents?
Well, if I'm speaking to parents, I will say, I mean, this is me as an educator, not as a parent speaking, but I just think the greatest gift my parents gave me was never judging me, never making me feel bad for being different. There was never a point in my life where I remember my parents saying anything mean about me or questioning. And it was always like, okay, well, this is happening and this isn't, we can't, you can't do this at school, but how do we fix it? Mm-hmm. And so and that's why I built the community that I did out of non-judgment, because I always felt so judged and so criticized by my outside world. I mean, I was also a foot taller than everybody growing up. That didn't.
I was surprised at how tall you were when I saw you.
I'm 5'11", so yeah. But holding space and being patient and understanding and validating people's feelings of all ages is the most, even if a kid acts up, it's, I understand you're angry, you're allowed to be angry, but you can't throw chairs or hit your sister when you're angry. Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of times too, you have to ask people what they're thinking, not what they're feeling, because they don't know what they're feeling. Especially that works with really well with grown men who don't know how to articulate stuff. It's, what are you thinking? But I just think for anybody that wants to do this kind of work, well, the first and foremost is learning and understanding boundaries with spirit. And, how to, is the most important thing you have to do before you dabble with spirit at all is learn about grounding and protecting.
Yeah.
But I just think surrounding yourself, not with people that are going to blow smoke up your butt, not that kind of people, but people that are going to be honest and true and authentic with you, that you can genuinely be yourself around. I always say, if you're not your authentic self, those people can't find you. And that is what helps your gifts develop, when you can truly be yourself and you find spaces where you can go and you can be seen and you can be heard and you just feel normal, for like lack of better words, right? Like not listening to the judgment, not reading the stuff, not going down, the rabbit hole of the stuff on the internet and the bad comments and stuff, like focusing as much as you can on the positive. And, I love to read. I love to see things from other people's perspectives. I have an open mind. Like most of my beliefs and my thoughts are the way that they are. And I have my own relationship with spirit, but I also am open to change. I think that's a big part. And always remembering that there are people that can teach you, because in my community, there's only a couple people I feel like I can go to that can teach me. And that's why it's so important for me to seek out other opportunities of growth.
Yeah.
And to know that like it's never ending. The conversation you and I had at the end of that event was a 5-minute conversation, and you said a couple things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need her to adopt me. Like you just, when you said it, like it just was like a perspective change like that. And so always being open to growing and, if you have a passion for something, I believe it wouldn't be there in your heart if you weren't supposed to do it. And sometimes it gets scary, and you just got to take a step back and remember that spirit never goes anywhere. We're the one that is disconnect. You can plug right back in whenever you want.
That's good advice. Yeah, that's great advice.
My face got hot talking about it.
And one more thing I'm going to say to the young people, stay away from the Ouija boards. Get a pad of paper and a pencil. Write the impressions you get connected to people you choose to bring through, because they're family members or friends that have your best interests at heart. You don't want to be opening up any portals to anything that vibes with your energy. It's just it's too much of a risk that something can come through that is darker, especially if the kid's depressed at the time that they take out that Ouija board. Frequency is attracted to like energy, and that's a real thing. And so people have to be careful about who they call down to connect with. And then adding to that, where can people find you for reading information, or where your fairs are, your spiritual fairs?
Well, my business name is Empowered Healing KC, like KC for Kansas City. So Empowered Healing KC. The fairs are called the KC Mystic Fair, the STL Mystic Fair. Those are all on my website. I have a Instagram for them too, the KC Mystic Fair. And then I have a Astrology Moon Witch is the meme page. So Astrology Moon Witch. I do have a personal page, which is CUNKC, my initials, CUINKC. So I share different stuff, and on that one gets people I've had friends for 5 years not figure out what that meant, and they say it all weird. But I'm pretty active on all those Instagrams too.
That's great. Okay, so don't be surprised. A lot of people are going to reach out because there are a lot of people looking for guidance and direction. You're one of those resources for them. And I had no idea the people in Missouri were so spiritually awakened. So I'm happy to hear that you have festivals there.
Yeah, and it's a lot different. When I went up to Nebraska, it was a whole different ball game. Even the community here, I've dabbled in, and I go to events. It is very different here than there. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's a very different energy state to state, and when you tour as a medium, you can feel the difference in energy in each ballroom or room that you're in to do readings. And some have very low frequency energy, and some are just popping off because they're so excited and they're like very high frequency energy people. It really is interesting to see the difference. And it's really hard as a medium. And I don't think people recognize this. We have to change our frequency to adjust and align to each client's energy that we read, as well as the dead's frequency and energy that's being emitted that we have to connect with. So we're sort of energy gurus trying to bring some sort of a stronger connection and balance between the living and the dead. Literally mediums, we're the middleman. and we're the in-between. And it's just so interesting. We're always recalibrating our energy to adjust to the people around us. So even with you going from place to place, that's going to take some energy from you having to then readjust every time you go back to Missouri as opposed to maybe Sedona. It's just very different, right?
It is very, it was very, I'm a lot better at it now than I used to be, but it's interesting. Even when I do readings, I'll hear my tone change.
Yeah.
Because it's like the person needs to hear that message in a softer way. And it so fascinates me. I'm like, I'm not even doing this. It's just coming out of my mouth different.
Or you pick up a different accent from the dead because they're from a different region. If you go to New Orleans, it's different than if you're in Scottsdale, like with a cowboy, and which we actually were like that. I know people don't think we are now, but we actually are. But it's just a very different vibe. So good for you. And I hope that the other mediums out there are able to figure it out. We did, so they can too. Carolyn, thank you for being here. Carolyn Ullrich, if you want to find her online, she will connect her Instagram account and her website on my Instagram, so you can find her if you didn't hear the whole episode today. And thank you to my listeners. Tune in next Tuesday for a fresh episode of The Dead Life. I'm Allison DuBois. This is The Dead Life. And to all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.
Join us next week on The Dead Life. And don't forget to subscribe now to get notified of every new episode.